Hi, I'm Peach. Finally, I've completed Elden Ring and I'm ready to share my review with you. Let's go, meow. Elden Ring is a dark fantasy action RPG from the Dark Souls developers. It differs from Souls-like games with an open world with dungeons, a mount named Torrent, and a lot of cool stuff which we will talk about next. The game has a very good story and lore, but it will be very difficult to get all 7 endings. Before starting the game, we need to choose a class. There are a lot of classes here. Warrior, Magician, Archer, whatever you want. You can even take a bomb with a club, but you will have to suffer more than usual. Story. As usual, at first everything was freaking awesome. The inhabitants of the world called the Lands Between worshipped their goddess Queen Marika. But suddenly she disappeared and the Elden Ring shattered. Then, each part of the ring fell into the hands of her children and gave them mighty power along with a curse. Having gone mad, her demigod children began to fight with each other for power. However, the war never ended and there was no winner. In the end, someone decided to summon the so-called Tarnished to the Lands Between. They were once exiled, but now they, that is we, must put all the parts of the ring together and become the Elden Lord. To do this, as you might guess, we must defeat all Marika's children, take away the great runes from them, that is parts of the ring, and sit on the throne. But of course it wouldn't be very wise to rush to the first boss right away. First Controls tutorial, which I successfully skipped and returned to it at level 20. Don't repeat my mistakes. If you've played Souls-like games, you already know about bonfires, where you can take a break, hide from monsters, level up, or even use it as a pose, which is not in the game. Imagine you are fighting the boss and the pizza delivery guy arrives. So, in Elden Ring, such things are called Sites of Grace. Next I will call them bonfires. Near one of them, a maiden named Melina will appear. She will offer to go to the Earth Tree together, but of course she won't name her motives. She will only say that everyone has a maiden and you need a maiden, so let's go. Here you can choose to agree to her offer or not, but I wouldn't advise you to refuse, otherwise you will have to suffer the whole game. She won't care, but you won't get a free mount and won't even be able to level up at all. But don't worry, the developers have thought it through, so you can accept her offer at any time. Let's go further. The world of Elden Ring, the Lands Between. The locations in Elden Ring are very beautiful, and some are very different visually. You can explore the world endlessly. There are a lot of dungeons, secret places that can be opened with special keys, and where you can find chests with cool loot, and so on. By the way, there are similar chests in other places, but some of them may be a trap. And no, I'm not talking about mimics, but I don't want to spoil. You can also meet merchants with different stuff here. Some of them are not easy to find, but their items and prices are different. Also, you can upgrade your weapon and even the dead called Ashes of War, which you can summon to fight with you, or even instead of you. However, you can summon them only in places where this icon appears. There are a lot of Ashes of War in the game for every taste and color, but you need to find them. Usually in dungeons or after killing some bosses. Dungeons, by the way, are also not so easy to find, but not far from them, there is usually a statue pointing like, "Son, you go there." Some dungeons are very quick, and some have very cringy enemies, traps, and burning acids. Usually it's not worth it, but sometimes after killing the boss, you can get good loot. For example, in one of the initial dungeons, I got a very cool helmet with cat ears, in which I ended up running the whole game. And now, the most important question because of which we're all here, is it worth playing Elden Ring? To answer this question, let's analyze the pros and cons of the game, and I'll start with the pros. First, open world. Personally, I love open worlds, so much so that I came to the first boss after having explored almost half of the map. The world here is so huge that you can endlessly explore it for months or even years. Every time you think you've already seen everything, the game is like, hi, and it's just freaking awesome. Second, story and lore. Usually, there is practically no plot in Souls games, although there was a good one in Code Vein and Nioh 2, but still. The story here is really good. Personally, I wanted to know everything about each character, what would happen next, what happened in general, and so on. Third, controls. The developers clearly tried to reduce the player's cringe compared to other Souls-like games, where I was terribly infuriated by the clumsy characters. They've obviously worked on it here. And yeah, I know that agility still depends on the weight of the equipment, but I'm talking about the animation of attacks and evasion right now. Fourth, hitboxes. For those who don't know, terrible hitboxes are when the boss swings at you and you see that his spear didn't even hit you, but for some reason you received damage. So, in Elden Ring, in most cases, the hitboxes are so good that the players made a bunch of GIFs and called it hitbox porn. In general, there are still a lot of pros, and to be honest, this is the only Souls game that I really liked, but if I continue, this video will never end and you will get spoilers, so it's better to move on the cons. First, 60 FPS. Yeah, the game has FPS log, which is a big problem for me personally, especially in this game. Thanks for at least not 30. Second, delay. Imagine you press the attack or evasion button on the gamepad and the character does them a second later, even completely naked. What's stopping here? Underpants? The camera spins without delay, but the character doesn't seem to want to leave and doesn't hurry to evade. It seems that instead of controlling the wheel of the character, I shout to him, dodge, hit, dodge, hit, you dumb. Anyway. Third, controls. I said in the pros that the developers improved the controls, but there is something very cringy called an action queue. For example, you fight the boss and spam the attack button, but the character doesn't have time to do all your commands when suddenly he's knocked over. At this point, you are trying to spam evasion so as not to die, but instead of evading, the character gets up and hits the boss, as if he's dumb. So he performs the previous action. My ass gets burned from that. Another cons is an empty world. Yeah, there are lots of things here, different monsters, bosses, castles, forts, and the like, but also a lot of ruins in which there is often nothing or just empty fields. And sometimes it upset me when I met the same monsters that shouldn't be in other places. For example, the guys from the academy. And the last cons, but the most important for me, is the character editor. Yeah, almost the whole game you don't see your character, which is very sad. Unless of course you are not playing for a naked mom. But compared to Nioh 2 in which I had a super cute yokai, the editor here is just terrible. Why does a woman look like a man? Ugh. Anyway, an hour later I finally made a more or less cute character. So, is it worth playing Elden Ring? Definitely worth it. Even if you are far from the Souls-like genre, it's definitely worth a try. Especially if you like games with an open world and dark Middle Ages, like The Witcher. That's all. Write down what you think was the most amazing thing in the game and what infuriated you the most. But try not to spoil it too much, okay? And I'm going to eat. By the way, you can support this content on Patreon. See you next game!
Thank you.